as the director of the Institute of Politics here at the Kennedy School, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you. Tonight we come to discuss North Korea, the U.S.-South Korean alliance, and the challenge of keeping the Korean Peninsula nuclear-free. In this context, we're pleased to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade for the Republic of Korea, Mr. Song Min-soon. Mr. Song comes to Harvard in the wake of last month's announcement that North Korea has agreed to a timetable to disclose all its nuclear programs. Born in 1948, Minister Song graduated from Seoul National University in 1975. He studied at Bonn University in Germany. And in 1994, he was a fellow here at Harvard at the Center for International Affairs. Prior to his appointment, the minister served as National Security Advisor to the President, as Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, and prior to that as Ambassador to Poland. And as he mentioned to me, when he was Ambassador to Poland, the United States Ambassador to Poland was Assistant Secretary Chris Hill, who's our negotiator at the six-party talks in Beijing, which made a very wonderful basis because Minister Song headed the South Korean delegation to the six-party talks and played a leading role in the adoption of the joint statement of September 19, 2005, an agreement, as most in this audience would know, aimed at moving towards a verifiable denuclearization of the peninsula, as well as advancing other objectives. Again, as this audience knows, the two Koreas have technically been in a state of war since the 1950 to 53 conflict, which ended in an armistice instead of peace treaty, and that issue is clearly on the table at this moment in time as well. In any regard, I would like to welcome to the podium a statesman whom we consider here at Harvard to be part of the Harvard community because Mr. Song is a former fellow of this institution. And with that, if I could, I'd like to introduce to all of you Prime Minister Song Min-soon. Minister. By the way, before beginning, I was joking with the minister, and this is a very true statement, that he's a master of numbers, 2, 3, 4, and 6. That is, he has led bilateral talks with the United States. He's led 3-country negotiations of seminal significance involving Korea, Japan, and China. He's led 4-party talks that relate to the whole possibility of achieving peace in the Korean Peninsula, and he's led in the 6-party negotiations. And so we have a master of multilateral diplomacy in the minister, and I think this is something this audience ought to understand. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You just numbered from 2 to 6, but we are missing just 5. We need some pentagonal. Good evening. Dr. Leach, thank you very much for your warm and kind introduction of my background. Distinguished faculty and guests. Let me begin by extending my warm appreciation to Director Leach and the Kennedy School for the opportunity to speak at this prestigious forum. 13 years ago, I spent a year at Harvard as a fellow at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs. It is really good to be back. The intellectual challenges and stimuluses I experienced during that period has been a good asset to me as introduced by Dr. Leach as a negotiator in bilateral and multilateral settings, as an ambassador and national security advisor to the president, and now as foreign minister. I appreciate so much to Harvard. Today, I'd like to share with you my views on the Korea-U.S. relationship in the context of the changes taking place in Northeast Asia. I will try to discuss the strategic interests and goals pursued by our two countries, as well as why I see the Korea-U.S. alliance is vital in meeting new challenges on and around the Korean Peninsula. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past century, North Asia has gone through a series of turbulent changes, including imperialistic struggles among major powers of the region, the disruption of world wars, both hot and cold, and the post-Cold War transformation. Today, Northeast Asia has emerged from all this turmoil as the most dynamically developing region in the world. With 1/4 of the world's population, the region accounts 1/5 of the world's economy, and that share is projected to grow 1/3 over the next 2 decades. Economic interdependency among those countries within the region has also been steadily increasing. At the same time, however, Northeast Asia is marked by the political and security uncertainties that inherently lurk behind the region's dynamic growth. This is all the more conspicuous with the recent changes taking place in countries in the region. China, as it pursues its rapid economic growth, is increasing its political and economic weight and actively taking part in every international arena. All eyes are now focused on how China's rise will affect the region and the world. Japan is trying to overcome its past and seeks an international role and status commensurate with its economic capability, with a view to becoming a normal country, quote and unquote. Russia, with its recovering economy, is also striving to raise its profile in Northeast Asia, attaching greater security and economic importance to its Far East and Siberia. When I had a meeting with my Russian counterparts, I always hear that Russia is an Asian country. They claim everything that concerns with Asia. And with Russia's oil money, I think the voice is rising further. These trends portend further changes to the security landscape of Northeast Asia, which could give rise to a regional rivalry among huge military and economic capabilities. Moreover, the threat of nuclear proliferation in Northeast Asia posed by North Korea's nuclear programs might upset regional stability if it is not properly addressed. There are even voices of concern about the potential fault line starting to take shape between the region's continental and maritime powers. Against this backdrop, the challenge for Northeast Asia is to prevent friction and antagonism among countries in the region and to manage regional security through constructive engagement, dialogue, and cooperation. Only by doing so will we be able to combine the region's dynamism and growth potential with universal values such as democracy and economic freedom, thereby creating a synergy effect that is good for the region and the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the Korea-U.S. alliance has served as a stabilizing force in the region for the past 50 years. The priority of the alliance today is to successfully manage the changes taking place on the Korean Peninsula, including forthcoming transformation of armistice regime into permanent peace regime. The alliance should also move forward to actively tackle the regional and global challenges awaiting us. The United States is an essential player in this regard, accounting for a significant part of regional politics, security, and economy. Geographically, it has the benefit of being an extra-regional country that is free from territorial disputes and controversies over history in the region. The United States should continue to maintain its role in the peace and security of Northeast Asia. This is an important element in the efforts to prevent regional rivalry and competition from escalating into dispute and conflict. For its part, Korea is playing an increasingly meaningful role in maintaining regional security and promoting cooperation. It maintains sound relations with all regional countries and historically has never been an aggressor or posed any threat to its neighbors. As such, Korea is in an advantageous position to facilitate stability and help prevent tensions without raising undue concern. And for example, according to a poll conducted last year by the Pew Research Institute on Public Attitudes among Asian countries, 70% of the Japanese and Chinese surveyed expressed unfavorable views toward each other. In another poll conducted by the same institute, 64% of the Chinese and 54% of Japanese public expressed favorable views toward the Koreans. And recently, as was introduced by Dr. Rich, I personally took an initiative in convening the Korea, Japan, and China foreign ministers meeting in Jeju Island for a three-way discussions of regional issues, and the first in its kind in separate settings. And the meeting I'm proud of was successful, and this meeting will continue in the months to come. The next meeting will be held in Japan. This is a good example of Seoul playing a constructive role based upon its unique position within the region. Clearly, Korea has a vital interest in containing rivalry among major powers in the region. History shows that escalation of rivalries has led to instability and disruptive consequences for the Korean Peninsula. And in turn, when the Korean Peninsula became unstable, the whole region was often thrown into conflict, as in the case of many wars in the last century. To illustrate Korea's role in the region, I believe that our position is comparable to the function of a ball bearing in a machine. When the ball bearings in wheels are solid, for example, there is little friction. This way, both the ball bearings and the wheels run smoothly, allowing the whole machine to function safely. In this case, the machine is regional security mechanism. The Korea-U.S. alliance make the ball bearings strong and function effectively. This is why a firm and smoothly operating Korea-U.S. alliance is beneficial to other powers in the region as well. I time to time say my colleagues in doing diplomacy, Korean diplomacy, this is the so-called ball bearing theory. I'm not a mechanic by education, but in my career as diplomat for 32 years, I developed this theory. I don't know whether this is applicable to other parts, but it's certainly true in the case of Korea and the region and ROK-U.S. alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, at its origin, the Korea-U.S. alliance was designed to focus on deterring aggression from North Korea. Over time, the success of the alliance, including South Korea's economic, political, and military growth, has enabled to jointly develop a broader vision that extends to regional as well as global dimensions. First, In the context of the Korean Peninsula, our alliance objectives today include denuclearization and turning the 1953 armistice into a peace agreement, and ultimately promoting democracy, freedom, and prosperity through peaceful reunification of Korea. I have a firm belief that a unified Korea will be democratic, market-oriented, and friendly to all neighbors, including United States, and nuclear-free. Second, in the regional context, the primary goal should be institutionalizing regional security and cooperation dialogue and securing the continued role of the United States as a stabilizer. Finally, in the global context, our aim is to advance universal values such as human rights and to strengthen cooperation on major regional and international issues. Based on such a vision, Korea and the United States are well on our way to transforming the military structure of the alliance. For example, the 2nd U.S. Infantry Division, which has been guarding the demilitarized zone for more than 5 decades, will be soon relocated far south of Seoul. Wartime operational control over the Korean forces will be transferred back to Korea by year 2012, giving Korean forces primary responsibility for their own defense, including the defense of the DMZ, while United States forces will play a supporting role. I think General Tilley is focusing, looking at me whether I'm saying the truth. I think you agree with me. Through this arrangement, the Korea-US alliance can continue to strengthen its defense posture and evolve in a way that meets the changing security requirements. The US forces in Korea will be in a better position to play a stabilizing role throughout Northeast Asia as well as the Korean Peninsula, even after the establishment of peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. I think other actors in the region are also receptive to the need of such a role. Beyond security issues, Korea and the United States have laid the groundwork for upgrading our partnership in economic, social, and cultural fields as well. I refer in particular to the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement and ongoing efforts for Korea's joining the US visa waiver program. The Korea-US Free Trade Agreement, signed in June this year, will substantially expand bilateral trade and investments and contribute to a better quality of life of the people of our two countries. According to a US International Trade Commission, USITC report, the United States will see about $10 to $11 billion increase in its exports to Korea, while Korea's increase will reach $6.5 billion by virtue of this agreement. On top of the purely economic benefits, the strategic implications of free trade agreement, this free trade agreement for both countries should not be underestimated, particularly in light of the dynamically developing political and economic configuration of the region. The Korea-US Free Trade Agreement should be promptly ratified. This past September, the Korean government requested the National Assembly's approval of this agreement. Meanwhile, the United States administration is still waiting for the right time to introduce the FTA implementation bill to the Congress. I believe that the leaders of the legislative branch of both countries will muster their wisdom to bring the free trade agreement into force as soon as possible. At the same time, Korea and the United States are making efforts to further expand cooperation on major international issues, such as the situation in the Middle East, and counterterrorism, liberalization of trade and investments, development cooperation, and environmental protection, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that Korea will be able to devote more of its energy and resources to these international issues with the progress in the resolution of the North Korean nuclear problem. North Korea's nuclear program remains an imminent threat to the security of the region, as well as a serious challenge to the global non-proliferation regime. Korea and the United States have made it a top priority to resolve this issue completely through negotiation. An important milestone in the endeavor was the agreement that was reached between President Roh and President Bush in Washington in September 2006. The two presidents at that time agreed to undertake a common and broad approach, we call it the CBA, toward the North Korean nuclear issue based on a shared vision for the future of Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. The two governments decided to pursue aggressive diplomacy with a view to comb out whether North Korea has a willingness to negotiate away its nuclear programs. We agreed on the principle that North Korea's actions on dismantling its nuclear programs will be immediately and surely met with our actions for North Korea's brighter path for its prosperity and coexistence, and in some other steps, vice versa. Conversely, if North Korea holds on to its nuclear programs, it will have to face the consequences. This is the framework in which the current process of the resolution of North Korean nuclear issue is advancing. This strategy on how to resolve North Korean nuclear issue paved the way for the implementation of agreement reached in Beijing last February and lately this October. Currently, North Korea's promise to disable its major nuclear facilities and declare all of its nuclear programs by the end of this year is being carried out. In parallel, corresponding measures by other 5 parties, including economic and energy assistance and improvements in bilateral relations, are moving ahead as well. North Korea's denuclearization is progressing in tandem with the improvement of U.S.-North Korea relations. Likewise, inter-Korean relations are expanding and deepening along with the denuclearization process, as we have witnessed at the Inter-Korean Summit held in Pyongyang last month. We are moving ahead on these 3 tracks in a mutually reinforcing way. They will pave the way to establishing a peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. Seoul and Washington share the view that negotiations can start to establish a permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula as visible progress is made in denuclearization. From a broader perspective, the establishment of a peace regime will in turn help build a multilateral security and cooperation dialogue in Northeast Asia. However, it is a grim reality that we are now entering into an untrodden territories of disabling a country's nuclear program by negotiation. We may hit a snag at any time. That is the reason why I am saying that we are actually now at a crucial stage. And that is the reason why I have to emphasize that we need to keep this momentum alive to reach the new horizon we have envisioned together. Ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is that the Korea-US alliance is robust and continues to evolve with a shared vision for the future. The ongoing adjustments in the modus vivendi and the modus operandi of the Korea-US alliance are right both in direction and method. I believe that these will constitute a solid basis for the future of the alliance under any forthcoming administrations in our two countries. At the core of the alliance today lie our efforts to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue. The peaceful resolution of this problem will also have a significant bearings on global efforts for non-proliferation, including in the Middle East, setting an important precedent for the peaceful settlement of nuclear issues through negotiation. Furthermore, in the context of peace and security in Northeast Asia, it will bring forth concentric circles of cooperation and harmony in the region instead of a confrontational fault line. These circles start from the innermost one, represented by the resolution of the North Korean nuclear problem. It would expand to the establishment of peace regime on the Korean Peninsula and to the formation of Northeast Asia multilateral security and cooperation mechanism. Ladies and gentlemen, recently there has been a serious debate on whether the United States is winning or losing Northeast Asia. Is the United States power in the region declining or gaining? I am personally neutral on that question, but I am sure that the positions I just made provides a good part of the answer to the future need of our two countries. I'm very much appreciating your time and attention. And I thank you for your interest in Korea, in the future of Korea-US alliance, and in the peace and stability of Northeast Asia. Your understanding and support have always been important for the alliance, and will continue to be so in the years to come. Thank you very much.
We will take questions at this point. There are 4 microphones, 2 on the main floor and 2 in the loges. And I would ask if everyone would introduce themselves and where they're from and make a brief question. We do ask people to respect those that might ask another question, so stay brief. Before doing so, let me note in the audience General John Talili, who once commanded American forces in Korea, and so we're honored you're with us, General. Thank you for coming up from Washington. We'll go now to the questions. Do you have a question in the loge, please?
Hi, I'm Audrey Kim. I'm a junior at Harvard College. Minister, thank you so much for your time tonight. My question has to do with North Korea's recent past in the denuclearization process. I think many of us are hopeful about the recent agreement that it's made to denuclearize, and I'm sure that no one is more familiar with the frustration and disappointment since 1994 when North Korea first agreed to denuclearize. For those of us who are especially hopeful about the October agreement, could you enlighten us as to why the North Korea of 2007 is more credible in its claim to denuclearize than the North Korea of 1994 or even the North Korea of 2002?
Well, I don't have any personal reasoning that North Korea is more credible than the agreement in 1994. Actually, I remember it was 13 years and 2 weeks ago when we reached, United States and North Korea reached an agreement in Geneva. I happened to be in this town when this agreement was reached. And I had a seminar in the Center for International Affairs and told to my fellows that any agreement should be made in the way that lasts. I'm not going to find any fault with this previous agreement, but this time in these six-party talks, the agreement was done not bilaterally. The agreement was reached in a so-called town hall, and all parties made an agreement. And that much, there is more chance to be implemented because in case any party which balks at this agreement should be punished by others. And that is the one ground. And the other things, in the course of implementing this agreement, we see, actually, we do not believe in words. We believe in actions. And North Koreans, as well as we, are now taking actions, even though the progress is moving somewhat slow. But this move will be something like a sort of, I say this principle of ratcheting up. It cannot slide back. We are doing something that moves forward, not backward. And I believe in the words. And I don't believe in words, I believe in action. And that is why I think we are guardedly raising our expectation. But as I said in my speech, we can hit the snag anytime, either by accident or by design. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Sir.
Hi, I'm Steve Stepak. I'm a teacher from Cambridge, Massachusetts. You spoke about the trade agreement between the United States and your country. Do you have a similar agreement with China? And can you elaborate a little on your trade relations with China?
Agree on China with what?
He's asking, we have a trade agreement under review between U.S. and Korea. Do you have a similar agreement with China?
Yes. We did not go into negotiation with China, but before, usually on this free trade agreement, what is preceding is sort of government and industrial sector joint study. We do now have three-way studies, both government, industry, and academia. And this study is now going on, and we will complete it soon. And then we will decide whether we actually go into a governmental level negotiation. But when you asked it, our trade volume with China is rapidly growing, and it has a lot of dark and bright side. So I think we have to be very much concise. We have to be very much, detailed in analyzing the potential, the results of that agreement.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Minister, for your talk. The ball bearing theory that you said, it's very interesting. But a machine, they need lubricants also. So I just wanted to bring this up, that whether the whole machine that you are targeting, whether there is enough lubrication going on so that the ball bearings then function properly. Now my question to you is, you're talking of potential catastrophe in the form of nuclear conflict breaking out in the region, and you're working towards it, which is admirable, and hopefully you'll have good results soon. But there is human catastrophe which is happening now as we talk on the other side of the Korean border. Is there anything that South Korean government or the international community is doing towards reducing the catastrophe in the form of malnutrition, children, or in the form of other things that the other side of the border people are facing? I just wanted to know if there is some work happening on something which is blatantly going incorrectly in North Korea itself.
I cannot get his point. So.
His point is that we have
Yes, that is very important question. We think that human rights situation in North Korea should improve. And we do discuss this issue bilaterally. And we know how to properly address to the North Korean audience who are responsible for the human rights situation there. But when we put, in our case, we think this changes for the better, the improvement can be done through more contact and more exchanges. We like to have North Korean people know more about the outside world. So at this moment, we are focusing on more contact and more exchanges. And in the course of these interactions, we certainly expect a result, that is the improvement of the human rights situation in North Korea. Time to time, I say on this subject, it is easy to love whole humankind, but it is not easy to love one human being. What I say is we have to have focused efforts to improve human rights situation. That's crying to the air about human rights, to our experience, does not work well. So the way we are doing is some more focused approach to improve the human rights situation in North Korea. And that is one reason, for example, we accommodate all North Korean refugees who wants to come to South Korea. And now we are now accommodating more than 10,000 North Koreans who escaped North Korea. And we will continue to do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Anna Kim. I'm a freshman at Harvard College. The question that I have is about potential reunification between North and South Korea. I know that in the past there's been some doubt about unification between the South and the North. So can the coming generations hope for a potential, or can the coming generations hope for unification between North and the South? And the second sort of nuance to that question is, would it necessarily be a positive thing for South Korea if it were to occur given North Korea's nuclear situation?
So you are curious about the prospect of reunification?
That's right, and potentially a time frame.
Well, it is up to how long I can live. Please extend my life as much as you expect the unification of the country. Some people make a forecast not because they know, but they have to make the forecast because they have to make it. I think unification will come. But I don't think we can make unification just by design. We need to make internal and external, bilateral and international atmospheres that is good for the unification when the chances come. As we saw the unification in Germany, even just even 1 year before the German unification, nobody predicted that Germany would be unified at that time. That is the reason why now we focus more on changes through contacts and changes through more exchanges and cooperation between the South, and narrow the gap between South and North, not only in the living conditions, but the way of thinking and way of behavior and people's life. In that course of efforts, I think sometime, without any early warning, the unification will come. Let's try to live long.
You, sir.
My name is Tarun Singh. I'm a freshman at the college, and I'd like to thank you for coming here. You mentioned in your speech the growing trade relations between the United States and South Korea and China and South Korea. In the event in the future that China's interests and the United States' interests were in conflict, how would South Korea reconcile who to support given that situation?
You mean this, how to reconcile between?
So in the future, if such an event were to occur that Chinese interests and United States interests were in conflict regarding a specific issue, how would South Korea weigh who to support given the increasing trade relations with both nations?
That's it. I cannot catch the exact point.
What he's saying is, you have trade with the U.S., trade with China. If the U.S. and China came into conflict, where would
I don't think China and the United States will not come to that much precipitous the situation. And this is the reason why I just emphasized, as you mentioned in my speech, that we like to accommodate this regional political and economic dynamism into the international community and acceptable to the international community. And China is already so much integrated into the global economy. You know that China is the largest foreign exchange holder in the world. And its dependency on international trade is, I think, about 60% and something. So I don't like to put to have the hypothesis you just exemplified. But anyhow, Korea is one of the largest, China's one of the largest trading partner, and same is the case with the United States, and similar is the case with Korea, Japan, Korea, the United States. So this interaction among these traders, these trading parties, will be more interwoven for a more constructive direction than the disruptive hypothesis you just said.
Sir.
My name is Frederick Law. I'm a Weatherhead Fellow and a German diplomat who until recently served in North Korea. And I have a question concerning confidence building with the North Koreans. About 2 years ago, sir, a South Korean think tank forwarded the hypothesis that, in a way, Korea is already can be considered as reunited. And it's run by the South Korean Minister of Unification, and by his North Korean counterpart, who doesn't have this title. And the procedure is like this. The North Koreans tell the South Koreans what they need, and the South Koreans answer how much they can provide. Now, this was 2 years ago. The situation has changed in a way for the better. It would be tempting, however, for the North Koreans just to play for time and to create some difficulties in the ongoing process, and to wait until a new United States government might be even more forthcoming towards them than the present one is. Do you think how great can one assume that this temptation is for the North Koreans, and what can be done against such proclivities?
Do you mean temptation for gaining time?
For gaining time in order to get more for their cash-strapped and resources-strapped country?
Well, I don't think time is in favor of North Korea. And you see, what we worried about is not North Korea's improvement of condition. What we are worried about is the deterioration of life and other conditions in North Korea. And lately, now, for example, North Korean Prime Minister, who is actually in charge of economic affairs, is traveling Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, which are experiencing a sort of a transformation in late years. And this North Korean delegation on visiting those countries are so curious about how you are successfully transforming. And this kind of concept was refused and rebuffed in the past years, so-called, that has any connotation of reforming or opening the country. So I think any suspicion that North Korea is just simply gaining time to earn something for their ulterior purpose is that does not has any grounds. And in my personal conversation with my North Korean counterparts from various sectors for last couple of decades, I see a slow, but some changing indications from them. So let's see. Let's see with some guarded position. We should not need to be overly sanguine and overly wishful in expecting. As I said, we believe in actions. We believe in there are steps to be taken, not the words spoken by them.
We'll do one more question if we could. This lady.
Hello, my name is Woo Jin Jung, and I am a research fellow at the Wiener Center of Social Policy. I have a question about what South Korean government and international community should go about providing aid to North Korea. Last week, the UNICEF representative to Pyongyang spoke in New York that spoke about the necessity of providing humanitarian aid for North Korea because it's devastated by flood last year and this year. But at the same time, he mentioned that it's very difficult to monitor aid flow and collect any necessary data for development assistance. So my first question is, what's your opinion on providing development aid for North Korea in this sensitive situation? And my second question is, although many international communities or organizations like UNDP, UNICEF, or World Food Program, and USAID has been pouring millions of dollars in North Korea, there hasn't been any assessment of their North Korean social and economic environment. And we all know that it's very difficult to know what kind of aid North Korea needs without assessing their basic social and economic environment. So do you think that UN or OECD or any kinds of credible international organization should lead any research on the assessment of North Korea's overall development situation?
So your question is how we can effectively assist North Korea in humanitarian aid? Is that your question?
Yeah,
Say so?
part of it is. And do you think we have to do more or less?
Yeah, I think your question has the point. When we provide assistance to North Korea, we like to have it distributed transparently. And we like to assist them in the right items to the right people and the right destination. And that's quite important. That is actually the basic rule for humanitarian assistance, not only to North Korea, but all other parts of the world. With that in mind, we do have inter-Korean relation is unique. When South Koreans bring some assistance material to North Korea and have the transparency of North Korean society through this assistance, that meets a distinctive resistance from North Korea because of the nature of North Korean society, its closeness, its isolation for the time being. So what we are going to do is to give them proper assistance with maximum transparency. That is agreed upon by the two sides. For example, I even sent my foreign ministry officials along with the assistance items that was shipped to North Korea to see around what is going on there in North Korea. I think even among the audience here, one of my colleagues, he accompanied that shipment of assistance and looked into North Korea. But at the same time, for example, World Food Program's assistance, it needs very rigorous transparency, and that demand was met by the North Koreans' refusal of accepting this assistance. So we have to we have to compromise these two requirements, how to keep them the right item to right people, and how to make this transparency take place. We are working on that. I cannot find the perfect answer. And one thing I can add on is we are actually the largest assistance provider to North Korea. With that in mind, we divide in a certain proportion. A large chunk of assistance in bilateral way, and some of it in multilateral way. We just donate our assistance to multilateral organizations like WFP or World Food Program or UNICEF and others. That is the way we manage.
Well, I want to thank the Foreign Minister very much, and as we as Americans look at the Korean Peninsula, we look at a great ally. We also look at a country that is growing economically and impressively is now leading the world diplomatically with the Secretary General, and prime example tonight with the Foreign Minister of South Korea. So we are very honored with your presence, and we're very respectful of your nation state and its leadership in the world. Thank you all very much.